Welcome. We're so excited for today's session. We are bound for a really amazing session today. I'm really excited. This is a special one for sure. We are joined by Melissa Brown, UJV Tropics Destination Specialist, and Mel's going to be walking us through her festive forecast, which is going to be packed with a lot of insights, a lot of golden nuggets, if you will, for this festive season. So, Mel, I'd love to hand it over to you. During the session, everyone, please drop your questions into the chat and then we'll do a Q&A at the end, okay? So feel free to drop them in the chat and we'll review them together, okay? Take it away, Mel.
Thank you so much. I'm Melissa. I'm based in Fort Lauderdale and super excited to chat with all of you about Festive. I love Festive. It's definitely a difficult type of request for clients, but UJV is here for you guys, and we'll kind of go through everything and how UJV can help. So, what is Festive really? Festive is basically, peak season for travel. Um, and peak festive dates, I would say, would be December 26th to January 2nd. But really, you see an increase in cost around anytime December 20th to January 6th. The earlier the dates, the cheaper it is, but some hotels, want 10 to 14 night minimums. So that's why we put that wider range in there. So what makes festive a little bit different than, let's say, Thanksgiving or spring break? It's not just a busy week, it's a celebration. A lot of hotels will have specific programming for festive. On Christmas, they have Santa come. Just there's a lot of programming that's involved for festive travel, especially because kids are out of school, offices are closed. The hotels typically build an entire calendar just for this time. So, who are the main clients that book Festive and why? I would say mainly multi-generational families. They make up a large share of festive bookings because it's the time when everyone is off from work. It's holidays, it's Christmas, it's New Year's. So I'd say families are the biggest makeup of festive travels, but then you also get couples who want to take advantage of time off and travel. So yeah, we'll go through all of this and more. So what can UJV do for festive? I'd say there's a lot that we can do for festive. There's just so many moving parts to a festive request, and a lot of inventory is not online. So we are always quoting festive year round. So we know what's available, what's not, even minimum lengths of stay and inventory that you won't see online. A lot of times you'll go on a website and you'll see X's on their calendar and you probably think, oh, it's sold out or it's not available. I'd say most of the time it is. It's just they don't publish it on their website because they're managing the inventory. So that's where UJV comes in because we're quoting them year round. We have an insight to what is involved, what is available and what's not. You know, I get asked a lot, when should you loop in a UJV specialist? I'd say right away. Once you get the request, let's start working on it. But we do need to have a lot of information, especially for festive, before we can jump into a request. We need to know specific dates. We really need a budget. We need the family makeup, not just two adults and three kids. We need the specific ages of the kids because you can say a child is 13 years old, but a lot of hotels will consider that an adult. So if we're asking these questions, it's because we need them to really help with the request. I always love to ask where are they flying from, just because air is playing a big, big factor in requests these days. If you're flying from LA, it's probably really hard to get to the Caribbean. So we might pivot to something like Hawaii or even Fiji, where it's easier to get to. Um, and what can you get by working with UJV that you might not get by going direct? You're getting a one-point contact for the entire trip, starting from quoting, booking, and servicing. So from the beginning of the trip, your UJV specialist will get to know the client's needs in the quoting stage. And then, from the booking, we put it all together. And then we also have concierge department and air team. So we can help with air as well as servicing it with all of the dining reservations, activities. Now, I will say for the servicing part, sometimes if you're booking a year in advance, we might have to wait 30 to 60 days prior to actually start servicing it. But we are there from start to finish. And I will say, working with UJV, if you're trying to quote four different islands, you have one point of contact versus having to go through four different hotels. Also, one really important fact to highlight is UJV pays commission when the booking is paid in full and non-refundable. So especially for festive bookings, those payments come through in September, maybe October. You're not waiting until December or January to get those commissions, which I think is a huge benefit as well. Now, what are some of my favorite destinations for festive? I would say number one is Turks and Caicos, just because there's a lot of inventory on the island. As well, it's one of my favorite Caribbean islands. I just came home from it yesterday. The beaches are amazing. All of the hotel products are really beautiful there as well. Why it's also really good for festive is the product ranges from, lower pricing range to higher. So you can find something from a lower price point, maybe like the Sands in Turks and Caicos, all the way up to something like Grace Bay Club, which, prices higher. What else? One important thing to note about Festive is sometimes their inventory is just isn't released until July, just for some properties, like the Palms and Shore Club, because their units are privately owned. But on the other hand, a hotel like Waimara has already released inventory for festive 2027, 2028. So just inside scoop that UJV knows when they're already releasing inventory. Um, Moving on to Mexico. I always ask my clients for festive requests, are you open to Mexico? Sometimes there is hesitation regarding the destination, but for me, I will probably choose Mexico over the Caribbean a lot, just simply because of the service and the hotels. I think Mexico service is some of the best in the world. Also, over festive, pricing is a little bit better compared to the Caribbean. Just you can find things at a lower price point, also price you at higher price points. But you have Cancun, you have Cabo, and you have Punta Mita. There's just a lot of different areas to offer. And I would always ask your clients, are you open to Mexico? Now, my next favorite one is the Dominican Republic. I think that it just offers a lot of range from rooms to villa products. And I think a lot of the hotels do festive programmings really well there. Also, a perk for the Dominican Republic, there's a lot of nonstops to Punta Cana. So that's something as well to take into consideration. And those are just three off the top of my head that when I get an initial festive request, I have hotels in mind that I can offer in each of these destinations for festive. Now, off the beaten path places for festive. We're in August already and festive is coming up, and we'll get to when is the best time to book festive, but it's actually already late to book festive because a lot of places are booked up. So some of the places that I like to pivot to that are a little bit off the beaten path for festive, the first one would be Nicaragua. I think that it's an underrated destination that offers so much to do. One of my favorite properties is Rancho Santana there, and there is typically festive space. And because it is off the beaten path, there usually is inventory that we can offer. And the next one is Fiji. Again, going back to West Coast clients, there's nonstops to Fiji, so it is a great option to offer. I will say Fiji, it is the low season during festive, so pricing is super competitive. With that being said, it is their rainy season, but I really don't think that can deter someone. Just like the Caribbean, it's rainy in the summer. I just came back from Turks yesterday. It didn't rain once. And in Fiji, for couples, I love Royal Davui. So if you actually get a honeymoon couple for festive, I think Fiji is a great destination and you can find an adult only property probably at a great value. If you're looking for families at a higher end price point, I love Kokomo. And for maybe a mid range, I love Nanuku. So really there's a lot to offer in Fiji for couples and as well as for families. And it's actually one of the most family-driven destinations I've ever seen. The nannies are like one to one, and it's for infants as well. So if you have young kids that want to travel, it's a very family-friendly destination. Moving on to St. Lucia, I really like St. Lucia for Festive because there's a different range of properties from a lower end to a higher end at price points, and there's also a lot to do. I'd say flights can be a little bit difficult to get to St. Lucia, just depending where clients are flying from. From a higher end standpoint, Sugar Beach St. Lucia is one of my favorite properties for Festive. They book up super far in advance. Their availability might even be online for 2027 to 2028 already. And for 2026 to 2027, I think they have like one 4-bedroom villa available. Like they're fully booked basically. Um, Maybe something's changed. Cancellations come through like 90 days prior. So that's the best time to check if there's available inventory that's been released. And then from, a mid-range tier, you have the landings and Windjammer. And, those are great properties for families and then for couples as well. St. Lucia's great. You have Ladera and you have Jade Mountain, which are adult only properties and super romantic. So I like St. Lucia because there's something for everyone. Now moving on to Belize. I really love to pivot to Belize a lot around this time of year for Festive, just because inventory in the Caribbean, people see the price points and they don't want to pay it, and I understand. And so I think Belize offers a lot of activities and beautiful beaches. I actually am surprised there's a lot of good international flights into Belize City. So that's a great selling point to the destination. I love Alaya, Belize. I like Itzana a lot. In Belize, people will sometimes do a combination of jungle and beach. So that's something that we can explore as well. So these are a lot of off the beaten paths for Festive. Actually, one more that I like to sell for Festive that's not mentioned here is Canawan. And I think it's a great product, especially for high-end clients. Mandarin Oriental Canawan is on the island, and I think it's an amazing product. And I spoke to them this morning, and they have availability for this year, so it's definitely an amazing product to explore for your higher end clients. Now, okay, let's go into some specific partners. So, Eden Rock Capcana in the Dominican Republic is probably one of my go-to products in the Caribbean for Festive right off the bat. It's a Relais and Chateau property, and the food is amazing. I really love their festive programming. Actually, their New Year's Eve party is probably the most extravagant party I've ever seen for New Year's Eve at a hotel. It's just insane. If you have an opportunity, go on their Instagram. It feels like a bat mitzvah or a wedding. They just really go all out. Their typical minimum length of stay is 8 nights. Now, around this time of year, special inside scoop is they might flex a little bit with 7 nights, or if they have a gap, they'll allow us to fill it. But Eden Rock Capcana, I love their beachfront units. They also have an area that's not beachfront, but you can still easily get to the beachfront area that you see in this image. They also have villas. The villas are all sold out for Festive this year, so sorry. They range from 3 all the way to an 11 bedroom there. But this property does sell out far in advance. I will say this hotel has pretty strict deposit terms. We'll go into that on another slide. But I are pretty sure, I'm so sorry. I'm pretty sure it's about 50% upfront, 25% of which is non-refundable. So you are looking at a non-refundable deposit with Eden Rock Capcana for Festive. Now, moving on to Grand Velas. Grand Velas is probably one of my most sold hotels for Festive, especially for multi-gen families. It offers something for everyone, and you get so many people that ask for all-inclusive over Festive. And if you're traveling with a group of, let's say, 10 to 20 people, grandpa's paying for it all. He doesn't want to bill for food at the end. So Grand Velas, they have an amazing festive programming. And out of all of the clients that I've ever sent there, I've hardly get no, I can't even think of a complaint. Grand Velas has a property in Cancun, Puerto Vallarta, and in Cabo. So there's really, if you have a West Coast client, if you have an East Coast client, they're can get to one of them, and it's really a no-brainer, Grand Velas. Like you don't think about anything once you get there. Also, what's great for young kids is they have a baby concierge. So if you have an infant, 1, 2-year-old, they really have everything you would need from strollers to bottle cleaners, and you don't have to think about it and pack all of that, which I think is amazing. And that's not just for festive, that's year round. Now, moving on to the Palms and the Shore Club, I think they're amazing partners for festive. They typically sell their 2 and 3 bedrooms because they're sorry, I'm rambling, because they have multi-bedroom units at these two properties for festive. And they're privately owned. A lot of them are not released into the rental pool until July 1st. So it's a little bit more difficult to quote these properties, but I really love the Palms for the location. It's centrally located on Grace Bay Beach. And then you have the Shore Club, which they're sister properties. They're both owned by the Heartland Group. The Shore Club is on Long Bay, so it's a little calmer if you don't want to be in the hustle and bustle of things. Both of these properties have a 7 night minimum. And for example, it's not available for 2027 to 2028 yet, but for 2026 and 2027 festive, there is inventory. Their festive policy is actually 90 days prior or October 1st. It's one or the other. And then going back to Grand Velas, their festive policy is actually you must cancel 120 days prior, which is pretty strict. So, if you're booking for festive this season, we're approaching final payment already if we didn't pass it. Now, a few other properties to highlight. Grace Bay Club in Turks and Caicos is another phenomenal property for festive. I will say that they have a 10 night minimum, which is a bit longer than a lot of other hotels in Turks and Caicos. They have a lot of multi-bedroom units. You have a 4 or 5 bedroom. You also have private residences that are located off property. Grace Bay Club is separated into 3 different buildings. And I will say their hotel building, which is adults only. Inside scoop is sometimes they will accept 7 nights. This is the only building that will take it, and it's adults only, so 16 plus. That's just some insider scoop that they'll make the exception. I love Grace Bay Club for the location, and you really just can't beat the service levels there. Now, moving on to Chileno Bay and Cabo, they have a 7 night minimum. I think Chileno Bay is an amazing option for festive. I love Cabo. I think it's a really special destination, and I think it's amazing for festive. I will say, I think sometimes people don't want to go to Cabo because it's a bit like wind chillier. Like you might need a jean jacket at night. Coming from Florida, it doesn't bother me at all. I think there's so many amazing dining options in Cabo. Chileno Bay, they have a lot of multi-bedroom units, so it's really good for festive as well for families. And then moving on to Hawaii, Hawaii is a great destination for festive, especially if you have people that, don't want to go spend 7 nights at a hotel. I do see a lot of properties that flex on their minimum length of stay. For example, we're featuring Andaz Maui here. They'll take anywhere from 1 to 3 nights. Now that's for the rooms. Andaz Maui also has multi-bedroom units, and for the villas that are multi-bedroom, you'll have to stay probably anywhere from 7 to 10 nights. Another property that I love to mention in Maui is Ritz Kapalua. They have a lot of festive availability, and they have multi-bedroom units as well that I've seen will take a shorter stay than a lot of places in the Caribbean and Mexico. Now, just kind of doing a little bit of an overview of availability and minimum lengths of stay. If you take a look at the Caribbean, usually it's 7 nights. Sometimes they'll start flexing closer to the travel date. But for example, Oil Nut Bay, it's in the British Virgin Islands. They will want 7 nights. If you look at a place like St. Bart's in the Caribbean, which we are not talking about it so much because it's really a complex destination for festive. They want 10 to 14 nights over festive. There are a few hotels that might consider 7 to 8. There's a lot of private villas in St. Bart's as well. 7 to 8 nights. It just really depends. Mexico, again, there's so much inventory over festive. That's why I will always ask clients, are they open to Mexico? I love Esperanza. It's an auberge property, sister to Chileno. It's not, it doesn't have a swimmable beach like Chileno, but it will take 5 nights. Hawaii, again, you can work around the minimum lengths of stay. You can find somewhere for 2 to 3 nights in Island Top. And then I think a great festive destination that's often overlooked, especially with UJV, because we're often thought of for tropics and warm destinations, but we also do ski as well. And of course, a lot of people love to ski. The Little Nell is one of my favorites in Aspen. They'll take 7 nights. So if you have clients that are looking to ski over festive, we do have inventory, in Aspen. We also do Park City. So if any clients looking for ski, we can assist with that as well. Now, when is the best time to book for travel? For festive, I'd say as soon as possible. I have clients that come back in January and they're already looking for their next destination because a lot of places sell out. The only struggle is that some places might not release inventory until 10 months prior. Then things start filling up. I'd say over the summer is when people are really starting. Right now is the time when people are coming back from summer travel, and we see all of the influx of requests start coming in because they're done with their summer travel and they think that they're getting ahead of planning early and going to start planning festive, but you're actually late. So the comfortable mark is probably 10 to 12 months, but then when places are releasing inventory, it's like 8 months. And then it gets risky. We still get festive requests in our inbox in November and December, and we're always working on it. But, you know, pricing is so high and waiting last minute. It's flights, everything. It's harder to put together a package that people are comfortable last minute because inventory is so tight and flights are just so expensive. And yeah, pricing is very high. So talking about pricing, I think UJV, if your specialist asks for a budget and keeps asking for it, there's a reason. And it's just because pricing is 25% higher over festive and there's no way around it. If you're hoping to go away in, let's say, March spring break versus festive, it's going to be 25% higher and there's just no way around it. And that's why we always ask for the budget. It's like the dreaded question. And something that's really important to look into while doing the quote process are the flights for the destinations because the pricing's insane for flights. If you're doing a multi-gen family, even going to Mexico, you're probably looking at $800 to $900 per person, maybe even more. So UJV can help with flights, but it's just something that I think is really important to take into consideration when putting these proposals together are the flights because it really impact if you get a budget of 40,000, we're going to say, does that include flights? And then the best way to frame it with the clients is really just, do you want to pay this premium cost or would you maybe want to explore other dates? I think it's just really tough because even if you have a budget of like 50,000 and it sounds like a lot, it really does. And we always want to help, but sometimes 50,000 over festive just doesn't get you what 50,000 would, even in November for Thanksgiving. Even though Thanksgiving is a holiday week, you don't see the increase like you see over festive. And these hotels can charge it. Every year they just go up and up and people pay the cost because they want to go over these dates. So that's why if you're working with your UJV specialist and we keep asking these questions, we really need that info to start working on the request because it saves us time down the line, right? Like we want to help you as much as possible, and having all of this information just helps us. So we'll always go into deposit and cancellation terms on the proposals, and and when we're going over the hotels. Most hotels will require a deposit, and we're in August right now, so final payments are actually coming up for a lot of festive quotes and bookings. So if you are looking to book something, final payment will probably be due at time of booking, which is a tough pill to swallow sometimes as well. And your UJV specialist can just always help with these things. So, just as a little bit of a recap, I feel like we went over a lot of information and we can, talk about festive for a while. If you have any festive requests, just reach out to your dedicated specialist. Um, Even if you don't have necessarily all of the information that we need, I think you can hop on a call with your specialist and at least try and brainstorm a way to help the clients. If it's not for festive, let's pivot. How UJV really helps navigate it is we have the inside scoop for festive. We are always quoting. We have a team of 20 to 40 people across different regions. So since we're always working on them, we share the availability as well. Favorite festive destinations will always be Turks and Caicos, Dominican Republic, and Mexico for me. It might change for someone else. Off the beaten paths, let's look at Nicaragua, maybe Belize, and availability of minimum length stays. Again, it varies from destination. A place like St. Bart's could be anywhere from 7 to 14 nights. Turks and Caicos, you're looking at 7 nights. Mexico, you're going to have flexibility. You can get 5 nights, but if you have someone asking for 3 to 4 nights, it's really, really difficult to find something. One client should book as soon as possible. Get ahead of it. If you have someone that, really likes Grand Velas, they already have their availability out for 2027, 2028. So I'll actually reach out to my clients and say, hi, do you want to book this already for the following year? Premium cost, it's just part of it. If they want to go away, they've got to pay. And then deposits and cancellations, it's just, it's much stricter over festive. The hotels need the payment anywhere from 90 days to 120 days prior. Sometimes deposits are non-refundable. Trip insurance is always encouraged, and we'll always work with you guys to, find the right fit for your clients. We love festive at UJV. It's always great to find the right fit for clients. And then when they come back, we just get to do it all over again. And that's, I think, really it. If anyone has any questions.
Thanks, Mel. Appreciate that. Anyone have any questions? Feel free to drop them into the chat. We can take a few minutes to review them together. I know Mel is an expert at festive season, so now's the time to pick her brain, ask her any questions if anything comes to mind. A lot of love from Mel in the chat. Great. We'll give us another couple seconds. All right, I think that's it, Mel. So we will send this out as a webinar replay so you can catch back up on it. And as always, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to let us know, either your assigned destination specialist or even send marketing at Ultimate Jet Vacations those inquiries, and we're happy to delegate. But thanks so much for taking the time today. Happy Friday. Hope everyone has a great weekend and happy festive.